You know, you never know in life what you might be able to do with certain information. Take myself for an example. I was never a numbers person. I was never interested in sports or sports scores. I had zero interest in the Dow Jones Industrials or markets or any of that stuff. But when I had a chance to really interface with it, some switches, little baby switches got flipped, and those later turned into bigger switches and so on. And I'm sure you've all had that experience in your life where you might have had absolutely no interest in something and you get exposed to it. And at some point, if not immediately, at some point, there's a growing interest that turns into a raging fire. And that may have happened to many of you regarding markets. But my point is that what can a little bit of very powerful information do? And if it could get you to look at the markets differently, which the square principle, which is what this webinar is all about, the square principle definitely can get you looking and thinking differently about how the market works and what you're expecting the market to do. And before you know it, some switches get flipped in your head and you start realizing, hey, I can actually do this with this information. I can actually put these kinds of trades together. I want to show you what we put together last week on the 25th for those that came to this webinar last week. And by the way, the purpose of this webinar is for you to consider coming to, quickly coming to our upcoming March 5th and 6th Square Principle webinar here in Las Vegas, or seminar here in Las Vegas at the Mirage Hotel. Let me show you that. Let me bring this up here. On that weekend, the weekend of March 5th and 6th, I'll be teaching the incredible square principle personally to those that are there. And believe me, I know what I'm teaching. I developed the principle from the very beginning, and I know exactly what you're supposed to do with it. And I know exactly what you presently don't know that you do need to know in order to make the square principle work for you. On March 5th and 6th, if you're here in Las Vegas at the Mirage Hotel, you'll be learning what we used to make the forecast last week and the forecast that we already have had happen today. Let me show you last week's forecast. It's kind of funny how this works. This is the forecast we made. The market was moving down, and those of you, many of you that are here now, were here then. You know, we sent out an email afterwards with this chart in it, and the email, basically the forecast that you saw live was the market was moving down into the close of the day, right around the same time now that we were speaking. And we said the S&P was down at 43.35, and we said the S&P should advance from the current price up to, which is 43.35, up to 44.10, 44.15, and then 44.40 to 45 into tomorrow. Now, that's a pretty big bunch of points. That's a 100-point advance from where we were at the time. But it's nothing for the square principle to forecast a 100-point move. You may be struggling with 2-point moves, but when I'm through with you, you'll be forecasting 100-point moves just like we did here. You can trade any amount of that you might be interested in, or maybe you just want to think longer term and invest in bigger, even bigger than that swings. But the very next day, the market did, this is a 60-minute chart, advance, and the high was 44.46.25. Now, that can't be disputed because those of you that were here last time, and you heard it live, and you know that this was given out completely in advance. And if you were here today, you would not be able to dispute today's forecast. Let me show you what that was. Now, this was earlier today. This is the chart over here this morning. And this is really just an initial target that we talked about. In spite of today's early decline, you saw this is the first hour of the day right here. Today's later session should trade at 45.25 to 45.28 or higher. Well, we were trading at 44.80 at the time. And many of you that are in our subscriptions know that this is exactly what we called for. It's late in the session, and the high so far has been 45.33. Now, you know, we gave out some other numbers just higher than the 25.28, but I'm putting that in this chart. We had to rush this because again, the market was moving up just as we were getting into the meeting. So can the square principle, if you learned the square principle on March 5th and 6th, would you be able to do something like that? Would you have some basis for believing the market's going to move 60 or 70 points or 50 points and know it with a high degree of certainty? The answer is yes, you would. Now, the square principle, when you learn it, since you presently don't know anything about it, and when I show it to you, you will not be able to say, I already knew some of this, or I already know all of this. No one has ever been able to say that, and no one will, because the square principle works on a principle that has never been published before. So what I'm going to teach you on March 5th and 6th, there's no way for you to have that information other than coming to the seminar. And it will all be new information to you. So it is a little bit like learning maybe a new language to a certain extent. Now, when we have these seminars at the Mirage Hotel, we're not putting them up to teach people that are new to the markets. I'm not interested in talking about or teaching the ABCs. I'm only interested in talking to people who have a working knowledge of the markets and who have even struggled with them, bought things, had success, had failure, are trying to understand where they're perhaps going wrong. Now, I can tell you for sure that if you know how to forecast sizable moves, that you will be able to work through any other issues. Well, the main issue is do you understand what the market's likely going to do? That's the main issue. Every other problem regarding trading can be resolved if you can resolve that issue. A lot of times people say to me, well, if you put a trade on, how much are you risking? What's the risk? And, we'll say, oh, it's a 6-point risk or it's a something. But that's never the right question, because people focus on what they potentially could lose. And while it's important, it certainly has nothing to do with the most important thing. And it isn't the real risk involved. The real risk is the risk that you're incorrect about what the market's going to do. That's the real risk. Every other risk after that is derivative of that initial real risk. So if you're really interested in going beyond what you presently have by a large margin, give me 2 days with you, because I really do know what I'm talking about. And I really can show you exactly how these kinds of forecasts are made day in and day out under radically different market conditions. Not only that, but we forecast in 14 different markets. So if you're concerned that the square principle only works in the S&P, which we show a lot of because that's our primary interest from ourselves and from our customers, I want you to know we also forecast in gold, in the euro, in Bitcoin sometimes, in many stocks, and so on, with the same kinds of results that you see here. So super excited about the upcoming seminar. Now, a couple things. Most of you here, not all, but most of you here today certainly have seen us do this live. Many of you were here last week when we made the forecast for the 100-point move that I just showed you, or whatever the amount was. You saw that, but many of you have seen much more than just this. Many of you have seen this done dozens and dozens of times, and several of you here have had subscriptions and so on. Is it time for you to learn the square principle, or are you better off not knowing it? Is it better to not know this principle? Are you better off just simply moving along and continuing to use what you presently use? I think not. I think that while others may continue to struggle with their markets, the market's twists and turns, your newly found information about the square principle, your grasp of that principle, will put you into the market in very, very different positioning with a very different outlook than others have about what is likely going to happen. Most of you know that markets couldn't possibly be random. But the experts will tell you, if they were to listen to me, that this is just nuts, that somebody is saying that you can know what the market's likely going to do. It just so happens, though, that those experts don't want to come here to listen to us, even though they've been invited. And I've even pointed out to them that we, for the last 2 years, have been making forecasts on Ameritrade with Ben Lichtenstein, where just last week on the 24th, you're welcome to go over to Ameritrade, I made the following forecast. Let me find it here. Here's natural gas. On this day, on the 24th, natural gas was trading at $382. And I told Ben on the program, on this very program, if you go to their site, Ameritrade Network, and you look at the date right here, down here, see it says futures January 24th, 2022. This is at 5 in the morning. So natural gas has just opened. It wasn't even at the closing level we're showing here at 382. It was much lower. Hell, it opened down at 372, 370. So, but we just use this as a starting point. But we were forecasting it would move up to 487 to 489. And Ben said, "Wow, that's a pretty sizable move." You can hear him say that. Well, and we said it would happen during the week. Well, it actually took a couple of extra days. It did happen during the week. It happened on Friday, but it did get up to 487.6 here, and it's even gone a little higher. But we haven't really closed much above that level. How long would you like to live without that information, without knowing how to do that? How long are you going to tolerate not having information that you really could have, like the square principle, to put together really astonishing forecasts for what markets are going to do, to say nothing of trading them and bettering your whole life through understanding the markets better? Now, if the principle that I'm proposing to teach you was readily available somewhere else, or partially available somewhere else, you could have some kind of semi-excuse to say, well, I can probably get a little bit of the information over here, and then I can kind of put it together myself. Unfortunately, you can't get the information even in bits and pieces. None of it's available. Everyone who comes to the seminar has signed a very strict 17, 18-page non-disclosure agreement, and it has teeth in it. And we mean business. We mean that when we teach this, it is private information for you and you alone to utilize this information. We don't want it all over the internet, and nor do you want it as an attendee all over the internet, since you're paying for it and spending the time and energy to learn it. Now, perhaps currently you're pretty good at markets and you use a number of perhaps indicators and other things. Nobody's going to stop you from using those when you learn the square principle. I'll predict for you, I'll go outside of markets and I'll predict for you that you'll be putting down many of those indicators once you really understand the square principle and what it can teach you to do. Because the square principle is ahead of almost every indicator that I can think of, ahead of it in the sense that it's not really going to, the indicator is not going to even be telling you to go long, and the square principle has already told you that. Now, one of the things we told people today about the advance that was going to happen here, and I want to go into this a little bit, is that it's going to likely go well beyond the 45.25, and we had in the 30s as well. It could easily be up at 45.50 into tomorrow. The problem we have today with giving out a new forecast is a whole bunch of our forecasts that we just recently made over the last several days have all come due. They've all done what we said they were going to do, including this most recent forecast that we're talking about with the this one here. It would have been nice, again, like last week, if we could have been in this area by the time we started this webinar, so we could have said, you know, we're going to be up completing it. But most of you here were here last week, and you know. Now, I do want to say this. There are a number of new forecasts that we're working on utilizing the square principle that we will have out. And one really good way to get more than one of them is to take a trial. And that means you simply go to our website and click on trial, and you'll pay $7 for a trial. And listen, if you're really just totally disgusted by everything you see, we'll give you your $7 back. But that hasn't happened. But I'm just letting you know, the purpose of that $7 is merely to make sure that you're a real person and so on, so that you're not just an internet name that's coming in and just changing your email address every week and so on. And you just click up sign up now and you'll be good to go. So yeah, a lot has happened just today with this forecast. Many people say to us, I really want to learn the square principle so that I can get, better trading and I can make more money, and all of their desires are there. I want to tell you something. The square principle probably can do more for you than what you are thinking it's going to do for you. So even when people say, this is the reason I want to learn, or I'm excited to learn because of this or that, it's probably going to do more than that for you, particularly if you really just spend the time to learn it. Now, is it really complicated? No, but the square principle, if you want these kinds of results, doesn't rely on a single time frame. So when you learn the square principle, you're going to find that one of the magical bits about it is that when you understand time frames, that you're able to put trades together, forecasts together that are utilizing the square principles basis for why markets make these big moves. And you can't have that knowledge without understanding the square principle on more than one time frame. So if the premise of using two time frames is frightening to you, maybe you shouldn't come. But I think most of you are going to be very happy to know that in the majority of the cases, the square principle does use at least two time frames. That is probably the most complex part about it, and that you don't have to be a genius or have special skills to make the square principle work. So whether you like trading 5-minute charts, 60-minute charts, or big daily, weekly, or even monthly, you can finally stop your search, because the square principle really can let you do this. And it can do even more than this, because when we have these webinars, I'm only showing you one of the aspects of the square principle, the one where it forecasts a distant price target, not a series, not 7 or 8 levels like Fibonacci, and you don't know that any of those levels are actually going to be reached. You're just hoping one of them will be. No, square principle doesn't do that. It names a single number that's way outside where it is now, just like we did with this trade, and suddenly the market's rushing up to get all that work done. So we're super excited about teaching it, and I have learned over the years. I won't say that I was the greatest teacher when I started, but I've taught a lot of people the square principle now, and I know how to teach this. I know what it is that you need to know right off the start, and within the first 30 minutes of the seminar on March 5th and 6th, you will understand what the square principle is, and then I'm going to show you exactly how to utilize it. Now, you may also want to know a little bit about me. Maybe you don't know, or I haven't mentioned it to you. You haven't been to a webinar before. I barely made it out of high school. I'm just going to come clean. And you might say, well, I'm really looking to learn from somebody who has a great education and who has been to college, understands applied mathematics, understands, other deep subjects, that lets me know that he has that education. Here's a funny thing. All those people who have those degrees and that great knowledge, good for them. You can't go wrong getting knowledge. None of them discovered the square principle. Not one of them ever discovered the square principle. And I'm going back 100 years in markets. It has never been published before. It has never been written about. There's no website you can go to that talks about it. There's no book or course that has ever brought it up. All the most educated people in the world have missed it. Now, I can't tell you why I saw it. I can tell you when I was about 15 years old, my parents, out of their concern for me sitting in my room and playing my guitar all day. They were concerned and they brought me to a psychiatrist, and I had a bunch of tests, and all my tests came out perfectly normal. Oh, except one. And that test I had no knowledge of when I went in. It was a test regarding spatial relationships. And that's where they'll show you, as an example, a bunch, I can't even draw it, a bunch of unfolded boxes. Like, here's a box. I'm going to do my best to show you this. And the box is unfolded, and it has some dashed lines in it. And you are supposed to fold that box in your mind. And then they give you about 10 pictures. You know, like if this was the whole thing, you would just fold that up, and this would be a box with a short little lip on it, and the rest of it would be flat, right? Something like that. But they were really complicated, and they grew in complexity. Anyway, at the end of that test, the psychiatrist said, you scored surprisingly high in spatial relationships. And I even then said, what is that? Not knowing that that test related to that. So I was already, I had something in my head that I can take any credit for, but the bottom line is I scored in the top 2 percentile. That means 98% of the people can't do what the box folding thing at that level. And I do believe that that had something to do with my discovery of the square principle and a couple of other principles that I've developed over time. So you will be learning from somebody that does know what he's talking about. You will also be learning from somebody who knows about trading. And you will also be learning from somebody who very much wants to see the excitement on your face when you understand what the square principle can actually do for you. Now, with me today, I do have somebody who was at our previous, or one of the previous square principle webinars. That's this fellow right here. His name is Jerry. Jerry was a student. He was a 8-year+ subscriber to Trader, and he finally decided to come from the East Coast to come learn the square principle. He went home with the information and worked with it, and one day over some time we got talking, and he was able to demonstrate for me his use of the principle, which, you know, he put down all of his other tools and put the principle to work. Well, now when you come to Trader and you check out our products, like as an example, let's go over here to the home page. You check out the Williams Edge Plus room. It has my name on it, but Jerry's the one that's actually developing the forecast, developing it from the square principle. Now, he and I discuss and talk throughout the day. It's really all of our work together, but he got good enough with the square principle that he's actually going to be the one that if you take a trial that you're hearing it from, because he has that skill, and he put all of his other work away and worked on the square principle and really has it down. That can be you. I'm not promising anybody else a job, but I'm just saying you could be very much in that same position that he's in, which is that he really connected with it. Remember, it's just a little bit of knowledge that can change everything. It certainly did for me. It certainly has for others. Some of them are here today. I've seen the room, and I know some of you. And I know some of you have come to the square principle seminar. So, and you know that this has changed it for you. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring Jerry on from our Williams Edge Plus room. Let's hear what he has to say about his use of the square principle and anything that you might like to ask him as well. So without any further ado, Jerry, thanks for coming today. How are you doing? Let's talk square principle.
Yeah, I'd like to see if anybody has any questions for me, David. Certainly happy to entertain those while I'm just making a few points. First point is we're going to have to do these in the morning because we were kidding around saying this thing's going to be done again by the time we get started with this webinar. This move is going to be done. It's you know, certainly a little bit frustrating, I know, for the folks here. It certainly is for us as well. I was certainly frustrated with the fact that this thing's going to get done here before we get a chance to let people know where the market's going. And you know, we've got a number of you know, it's a great room here, by the way. Nice full attendance. Nice to see it. Got a number of folks here today who did hear it live first thing this morning, David, and who helped us you know, trade with us in it. Good. So those folks who are in here, you know who you are. You heard it here today. live all day, what we were trading for. And you also knew what the upper number was. Actually, David, you know, you and I talked about it first thing this morning and said, listen, how are they not going to go to 45.40 to 43? Right. How are they not going to do that? Right. How are they not going to do it? Well, here they are. This is the absolute square that they're hitting right here. This is actually the square. So forget 28s, forget 31s. We traded to those numbers on the way up here today. But I made no mystery of it. You know, 41, 42, 43, this whole area is the square itself. This is where the market was destined to run to. So, you know, trading aside, just wanted to put that out there that a number of traders here who are listening to us know absolutely full well that we put this out here this morning. And this has been the cornerstone of what we've done in today's session. So, you know, fantastic for the traders who were able to take it. It's a shame we weren't able to put this out for everybody here to take advantage of it, but it is what it is. And this is what a run to a square looks like, David, and it's a beautiful, beautiful phenomenon. So I'm thankful for your gift. I knew the story of your gift. I find it amazing, and I absolutely am convinced that it's that physical ability that you have, spatial perception, that allows you to have seen what nobody else sees on a chart. I'm absolutely convinced of it. So, you know, it's incredible. You know, a couple of other points I want to make is, you know, you and I had a conversation today with somebody here. Now, he's not here right now, but, you know, the idea of willingness to lose money in a trade. You know, I'm willing as a trader to be in a trade, and I lose. You know, it depends on the scope of the trader and his account. But, you know, listen, we've all been there. If you've been around the markets and trading for years, you know, forget spending money on classes and stuff and indicators and whatever you spent money on. How about just losses? I mean, let's be honest. I, for one, long before I learned the square principle, was certainly in that camp, which had certainly had plenty of success. But, you know, we've all experienced losses that I'm sure far exceed the cost of attendance for the seminar. And, you know, I'm always curious as to why we do that. Why am I willing to lose $7,000, maybe not in one day or one trade, but, you know, over weeks, months, or even a year? I'm sure that's, you know, many traders here listening to us right now have had a year where they've exceeded a $7,000 loss. Why not stop that, or at least have the best chance in the world of not doing that anymore, and really understanding the position of the market and understanding how to trade that and what the market is, how to understand that the market needed to run to 45.40 and what put it in that position. Where was it right? Where would it have been wrong? Everything to do with this move was knowable. It's knowable. And if something is that incredible and that knowable, that can have this kind of impact on how a trader looks at the market and potentially trades that, I don't get it. Honestly, I just don't get it. There's got to be a reluctance there. Why someone wouldn't come and learn it. And I know there's plenty of folks in here who have learned it, and they're here for their own reasons, but they know it's real, David. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. It is real because I use it every damn day. And I'm thankful that you started teaching this in 2015. That's where I was there. And I'm thankful every day that I know the principle and that you were willing to teach it. That was the first year you were willing to teach this principle. I think it's outstanding. I think it's amazing. And the fact that you're willing to teach it is incredible in its own right. The fact that it only costs $69.95 is crazy to me, because and I know we don't like to talk about money. We're not promising Lamborghinis, but again, the knowledge alone is worth so much more than that. Not because of what a trader can accomplish with it. This trade alone is huge, all right? But the knowledge and the ability to put everything else to rest and say, I don't need to waste my time with anything else once I've learned the square principle, is truly priceless. It really is priceless. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, see, Steve, I see your comment. I see it right now. I know David will address it. $69.95 is not crazy. Okay, it's not crazy at all. Not when traders have lost far more than that in the markets, and not when you realize only someone who doesn't understand how valuable this information is would think that $69.95 is too much. Okay, so and David will address the rest of it in a few moments. But what I'm going to say, David, and you don't know this, but what I'm going to say is this. The March 5th and March 6th seminar is going to be scaled back because of COVID and, keeping things safe and what have you. So it's going to be scaled back. There are only literally 3 seats remaining. And we've got a big group of people here today. So there's only 3 seats remaining. So what I'm going to do is to say this. If you have any idea that you would like to attend and you want to put down a deposit, I'm going to have you call the 800 number, and Cheryl Lee is going to put you through directly to me. I'll answer any questions you have. She's going to put you directly through to me. And this is only good for the first 3 folks who want to book a seat. And those 3 individuals who put down a deposit, fully refundable. If you can't attend, change your mind, you're going to get it back 100%. But if you do attend, I'm going to provide you additional value. You'll have to call me to find out what it's going to be. It's going to be a discount. You don't know what that is. I'll share that information when you call me, and we'll talk about your attendance. We'll answer any questions you have, and I'll share that information of what I'm going to do for you. And so with that, David, I really feel that, again, it's going to be a small group. There's only a handful of seats remaining. If somebody has been putting it off, I don't think they should put it off any longer.
No, super, Jerry. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you going over all that with them. A couple things I'd like to say, and I will answer some questions here as well. I really appreciate your questions. Number one, the square principle is 100% objective. That means that my square number, the price target that the market's going to reach, and your square number are going to be the same. They don't change. There's not going to be partial. It's going to be the same, as long as your platform is working properly. So with all the other things being equal, it's 100% objective. It's not like trying to count Elliott waves or something where you have 2 people, 3 people. You could put 1 person in a room and he comes up with 3 different Elliott wave counts. You could put 3 people in a room, they come up with 3 different. That's subjective. The square principle is objective. Everyone will have the same information. If you hear me before learning the square principle forecast a move, after the square principle, you'll be able to go on your chart and find exactly how we forecast that move. So your number will be the same as ours, again, as long as your platform is working correctly. And most of them do. And if there's any changes that have to be made, we'll show you where that change has to be made, just in case. The other thing is that the square principle levels are not a moving target. You don't have to keep recalculating for a single distant square principle target. It's pretty much the same. There are things that the market can do that will eventually change that number, but in common normal daily use of it, it's not a moving target. The square principle is actually tradable in real time. It's not like Elliott wave or other things. I'm sorry to hammer on Elliott wave, but something where after the fact people say, oh, well, here's your wave 1, here's your wave 2, and you could have done this and you should have done that. The square principle is actually applicable to trading. You would think all trading methodologies are applicable to trading, but actually most are not. Most actually are not applicable to trading because too much has to happen before the move can be confirmed, and by the time it is, the move is over. The square principle has worked exactly the same for me for the last 3 decades plus 2 years, 32 years. I started in 1990. And I've been using, by the way, CQG, this platform, since 1990. I'm now, I believe, their oldest, not oldest in age, but their longest running single subscriber to their service of any of their stuff. CQG is a high-end platform. Other than the traders that I've taught, no one would be able to look at these charts and know how the forecast was made, except you, when you understand the square principle. And remember, it doesn't matter what kind of trading style you have now or what kind of trading tools you're using. Once you understand the real reason the market makes these moves from one level to another, it opens up an avalanche of new potential trading ideas that you could put to work in any number of ways, just like we do. Now, people say, if this is so good, why are you teaching it? Why would anybody teach something if it was this good? Well, first, I'd like to say to you that, and I know many of you know this, and I will just for a moment here before I go through this, put up our trading disclaimer. And what I'm about to show you isn't a promise that you're going to make this money, or it isn't a promise that, you know, it's not a simulated performance either. This is these are actual trading results. But please do read our trading disclaimer before believing anything that I tell you here. I don't know how to even verbalize it. But this is from 1/1/21 to 12/31/21. Just a segment of 1 year. These are the profits or losses on the right-hand side. We're selling options against individual stocks. We do have losses in here, but at the end of the year, and they're all listed at the bottom there, we have $409,226 more than we started with. That isn't hypothetical. Those are actual trades that we actually made, and there's a real account with that money in it. Of course, now it's different number now than it was then. This segment belongs to a larger account that is sitting around 1.4 million as the last time I checked. And that 1.4 million is doing the same thing we did here, except we switched brokerages. So we don't have that same string of data that we used to have that we used to be able to show. So we're just showing it year by year here. We had a great year in 2021 all the way through December 1st. So we really do utilize this same information in the markets. In that case, we're just utilizing it by utilizing options. And so on the weekend of March 5th and 6th, behind the closed doors of a very luxurious private conference room, a select number of fortunate traders will be given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn the square principle and learn how to forecast these distant moves and stop guessing at what the market's going to do. You won't be learning it over the telephone or on a mentoring session online, but directly from me in that room with you and I having an ongoing conversation, so that even as I'm presenting, you can be asking questions so that you get the very best education. And all you have to be is be there for 4 hours on day 1 and 4 hours on day 2, and 2 of those 4 hours, or 2 of those hours on day 1 and day 2, both of them are for lunch. And we all lunch together and so on while you're learning all this. So like I said, within the very first 30 minutes of that seminar, I'll be telling you and showing you exactly what the square principle is, and be ready to be surprised at what it is and how different it is, and how it is a principle and not a trading system. So I'm not going to teach you a system that says, you know, oh, buy here and then place your stop for sure here, and the market, when it gets here, take partial profits. I'll tell you how we use the square principle, but what you're really learning is not a system. Systems are far too limited to be able to do everything that we're showing you here. A system can't deal with a market that changes every day, and the markets do change every day. A principle can be used, though, to understand what the markets are likely going to do. Let me take some questions from you. I'm sure you have some. I'm trying to be as clear as I can, but sometimes it doesn't come out of my mouth as good. Let's see. Mike is here and he says, is the square principle just based on price, or is there any use of volume? That's a great question. The square principle is a price-based principle. It doesn't require the input of volume or any indicator. So all of these forecasts that you see where we're making these big moves, or you see me, and hope you will watch me on the next program on Ameritrade with Ben Lichtenstein. I'm on there because I'm the only guy making direct, specific forecasts for what markets are going to do. It doesn't require input from volume. It's a purely price-based approach and principle. Mike also says, if I take the class in Vegas, does that get me any access to the daily classes? It does get you access to the daily classes, and Jerry, when you call in, we'll go over that with you and show you. But it also does something else. It gets you direct access with me, because any square principle student can contact me at any time. We don't have a limit on the time. It's not like, oh, 60 days and everything goes away and you can't. No, I'm here. I'm talking to people that I've trained years ago. And in many cases, and just as an example, I come in on the weekends to have weekend meetings with people who have been to the Square Principle. Whatever their question is, maybe they're saying, hey, how did you forecast that natural gas? Or how did you forecast today's move, this big move in the S&P? How did you know so early that the market was going to firm up? And if it stayed above a certain level, that it would do such and such. And we did know, and we told everybody, and those of you that are in our meetings, what the price level was I gave you, that as long as they closed above that level on the hours, we were going to be up at these high prices and so on. So Mike, it's a lot less complicated than most people would think when they see the results. I hope that's good for you. Thank you. Marcus here, and he says, were you eating mushrooms when you discovered this? Tell the truth now. It's funny you say that, because as much as I wouldn't want you or anybody else to know, there was a time in my life when what was later to be the mother of my daughter and I were dating. She introduced me to psilocybin mushrooms. So I'm not saying that I sit around taking psilocybin mushrooms. I would never do that, but I did do it once. And it was, I don't need to tell you what a drug trip is like, but it didn't help me in any way. I'll tell you that, except that it got me out to Las Vegas in a certain way. So thank you, Mark. That's very funny. Dominic is here, and he says, hi, David, I have a different candle display in the ES using IB, a CQG calculating the closes differently. What Dominic is bringing up for everybody that's interested is, remember I said it's 100% objective as long as your platform is operating correctly. And I can tell you, Dominic, your platform is not. And it's not that it's not fixable. If you call up, I'll show you exactly what to change to make sure your platform is working correctly. So there are things that platform providers do. They've gotten much, much better over the years. But I want to tell you, if I wasn't using CQG from the very start, I would have never discovered the Square Principle, because it wouldn't have had the forecasting ability, because so many platforms were doing it incorrectly at that time. So don't feel bad about it, and I will do it for free for you, whether you come to the seminar or not. If you call in, I'll make sure that your platform is operating correctly. So at least if you're interested in having that done, I'd be very happy to do that with you. Thank you, Dominic. Ken is here, and he says, when you say put the work in, how complicated is this to implement, say a month after taking your instruction, and how much hand-holding is typically required to learn it? Well, Ken, great question. One of the things that is very important is that we don't take newcomers to the market, right? We're not teaching the ABCs about markets. We're taking people who are experienced in markets, have struggled with markets, and have had some successes with markets, have bought things, and so on. Now, the reason we do that is because those people, if these are you, their expectations are quite high. And we've never had any problem with matching and exceeding people's expectations. I'm not looking to impress a newbie who knows nothing. I'm looking to blow your mind after having traded in the market for 5 or more years, and have you say, boy, that is just really something else. And you will say that when you see what the Square Principle is capable of doing. So that's number one. Number two, everybody learns at a different rate. I myself, I'm actually kind of a slower learner. I think I get thrown off by things that people say, and I go down that little pathway and it kind of runs me into a wall. And then sometimes I know Jerry's a very good learner. He's very fast. I know I speak with him every day, but I'm not the fastest learner. So it takes me time to process the information and get it in. So I can't give you an absolute period of time, but I can tell you, you do not have to be a genius. You do not have to have special skills to make this work. All you have to do is understand what it is that the Square Principle is telling you, and be able to work on more than one time frame, generally 2 time frames. Because part of the principle is how we know the market's going to move. And this is for people who've already been to the Square Principle, because I know some of you are here. How do we know the market's going to move through an existing square that it's going to be attracted to and go beyond that to some other square? How do we know that? We know that because there's an interaction between timeframes that I'm going to teach you at the Square Principle. So Ken, it's a great question. Everybody learns and processes information at their own rate, but I do want to assure you that I take all of the Square Principle students very seriously. For the last 28 weekends, I come in both days of the weekend after a long week, and I teach people, help people with the square principle if they have any questions. It's not that we have zillions of people asking, but in any given week, there's hundreds of people that know it now. There's going to be a couple people that might have a question. It's too busy during the day now, so we're doing it on the weekend. So you're welcome to call me and I'll help you. I really know the material thoroughly, having developed it from ground zero all the way to where it is now. I really want to stress it's a complete package. There's nothing that needs to be added to it. You don't have to blend it in with anything else, but you will eventually blend it in with what you're already doing on some level. And you'll find that it actually is way ahead of indicators in so many, many, many cases. Now, there's nothing wrong with indicators. It's just that they're very, very limited and they're very fixed. They only are doing the same calculation over and over again. The markets are too big for that. They're as big as life. And the square principle takes all of that into account. So I hope that's good. I hope that satisfies you to some extent. Thank you, Ken. Steven's here. Hey, Steven, he says, why do you charge so much for the class? If you're making excellent money, why charge so much? Why not just $1,000? Well, it's a good question. We originally, when I discovered the square principle back in 1990, I believed everybody knew it because I was brand new to the markets and everybody was smarter, than me, right? No, I'm just brand new. But I didn't realize how unique it was and how unusual the principle was. And over a number of years, I started realizing, hey, I read these magazines, I go to these courses, I bought courses too, and so on. And I find out that nobody's talking about any of this, and they're all talking about something else. And at some point, I realized, hey, this is a unique principle. From 1990 till 2016, so that's 26 years, I went without teaching this principle. I didn't want to teach it. I wasn't interested in spreading the knowledge around. When we finally took all of the risk of, we took on the idea of teaching it and took on the risk and took on the expense of being at the Mirage Hotel. The food alone that we charge, that we give people there, is thousands and thousands of dollars. It's 5-star. I mean, you're going to want for nothing. The expenses and everything else, and our time and effort, we came up with that price. I do want to let you know that back in 1995, 1996, and I know you don't know that this is true, but it is true, that I was going to various places, watching people talk and so on about markets, and I ran into a group of people that were pretty experienced traders. And even back then, I was able to make forecasts that were really astonishing to them. And this was back in 1995. And back in 1995, a number of them wanted to learn the principle as I understood it then, which is much, much less than I understood it now. And a decent number of them, at least 15, gladly paid $25,000 for this principle. And this principle remains their most jealously guarded secret to this day. So, I do understand that, Stephen, it may be too much for you. And if that's the case, please don't let that worry you. But I will say this, if you're actively trading in the market, Jerry brought up a very good point. People will gladly work very hard at losing even more money than $69.95 over some period of time. Not all in one trade, maybe, but after another. And people feel okay about that. They don't like losing money, but they feel better about that than they do paying that money. Paying is a different feeling than losing your own money in the markets. And I completely understand that and agree. But at some point, you have to have knowledge. And if you're not able to understand what the market's likely going to do, your trading is going to reflect the lack of knowledge. So knowledge is the very most important thing. Education about this particular principle. People generally will say, well, education is really important. People spend $100,000, $70,000. I know my son went to UCLA and I paid $65,000 per year for him to be at UCLA. And he was a high-end student. He was number 4 in his high school and all this other stuff. Very smart. But we still paid $65,000. And that was before where you live on campus. I forgot what it cost a month, but it was you lived on campus. Education is expensive because there's a lot of work in providing all of that for people. Now, if it is too much for you, it may not be for you right now, but it's not nearly as costly as taking all of your remaining trades and investment ideas without the knowledge of this principle. It's also not as costly as trying to figure it out. Because as I said before, there really are very smart people, even, and I'm very happy to tell you, much smarter than I am, much more educated than I am, that for some reason could not see what I saw. And this principle is unique. And if it's too expensive for you now, my best suggestion is don't worry. And my best suggestion is, if we hold future seminars, because COVID is making us shrink this one down, so we have to have a limited number of people in the room. They've got 6 machines that are processing the air in the room so that nobody gets anything and all that stuff. We practice all the COVID guidelines, but we normally have a lot more than we're going to have in this seminar. So it's really limited to a relatively limited number of people. But I would just say to you, as you continue to grow in your trading and make attempts, at some point this may become available to you. We feel that the $69.95 is, while it is a chunk of money that somebody would have to spend, no one has ever said, hey, I would rather have my money than have this knowledge. Well, let's swap it back. I want to erase the knowledge and I'll just have my money back. It's that good. So I wish I could tell you more than that, except that is the price, and that covers expenses that we have to go through and so on. And it's quite a bit of responsibility to take somebody on, Stephen. Let's say I take you on. I don't know what speed you learn. I don't know really what your level of understanding of markets is, but I have to work with you, and I've got to deliver everything I said I was going to deliver. So that's part of it as well. So I'm sorry that that may be too much for you at this time, and I understand that. Stephen says, okay, answer the question. I hope I did, Stephen. Irfan's here, and he says, when a prediction is made, how much in advance days can it be predicted? Well, it depends on the time frame. The time frame that the square principle is operating on gives you the amount of time in advance that you can usually know what's likely going to happen. So in a short-term time frame like today, where we said, hey, the market, down here when the market was at 44.80, we were using intraday, 2 time frames, intraday and larger, going to happen in today's session. If we go back to last week, when I forecast for all of you that were here, this 100-point move, and those of you that were here, you saw it, and you got the letter afterwards where we were bragging that, hey, we called this using the principle. When we did this, we used a very similar set of conditions. We used the 60-minute chart along with a larger time frame and put that all together to know that the market was going to move up 100 points in the S&P, and it indeed did exactly that and stopped at 40, 44, 46, and so on. So I hope that answers that question. Thank you, Irfan. He also says for a particular day, yes. Irfan says, Jerry, hi, how much do I need to put into book the seat? Let me tell you, you can put a $1,000 deposit. You can go to our website or call us, and if you call, you'll get a chance to speak to Jerry. Jerry is super knowledgeable about the square principle, but I do want to show you, when you come to the website, how you can do it on your own. By the way, the deposit is 100% refundable at any time, all the way up to the day of the seminar. So if you come in like this to our homepage and you click on the square principle, scroll down, here's the square principle over here, you click learn more. And at the very top of this page that has the seating and everything else talked about, you just click here to reserve your seat. See in the center here? Click here to reserve your seat, and you choose the option of square principle seminar 3.5 to 3.6, and then you'll click on pay deposit. That'll ask you for the $1,000 deposit. If anything comes up between now and the seminar, and it's, we only have a month or so, then you can call in and they'll just refund your money that day. We don't have a special day of the week that we do it, or end of the month. If you can't come, we'll just refund your full amount. It doesn't cost you anything to have that. By the way, we're long time, more than a decade, members of the Better Business Bureau. We have an A+ rating with them, plus we're accredited. And the only way you get accredited with the Better Business Bureau, that's their highest rating, is because you make everybody happy. Everybody who does business with us, if they pay us money, they're getting what we told them. If they have a refund due, they get their refund. We treat people very fairly. We have no interest in angering you or trying to keep something that isn't ours and so on. All of us are doing just fine. We don't have the need, and we've been here, the Daytrader company has now been here 23 years. We're one of the oldest companies on the internet, if not the oldest, doing this kind of work now. So I hope that's good. You can just do that, or you can call in and they'll take your deposit over the phone. And I want to assure you that if you do come, you'll be very, very happy with what I'm going to teach you. Let's see, a few others here. Let's see. If I have to cancel, I can cancel later. Yes, you can cancel at any time up to the day of the seminar. Stephen is here and he says, I mean, on the natural gas trade with options, you could have easily made 200,000 with minimal risk. Well, I can't really address that. I mean, I see you're making that statement. What I can tell you, Stephen, is that with the natural gas trade, we did forecast. That was really a forecast that we made on Ameritrade. And again, just to prove, because I know you probably have some skepticism, go to Ameritrade Network. You can listen to any of the forecasts that we've made, but this one was made on the 24th, and this is at 5 in the morning. Let me scroll up here a little bit. This was at 5 in the morning with Ben Lichtenstein. Let me just point that there. At 5 in the morning, we made that forecast for natural gas. The question, you know, what I would prefer for you to focus on, if you don't mind, is instead of talking about the money that could have been made, what I'd really like to hear you say is, how could somebody have known that the natural gas market was going to move up so powerfully? How could somebody have known that with technical information? As it turns out, it was something to do, this is that natural gas trade right here. That's what I'd like to hear you say, is how could that have been known? Because before you can talk about $200,000 and before you should talk about money, you should really be talking about gathering and gaining knowledge to allow you to know how something like this could be done. And it can be done. And we do it every day in the markets and in widely varying markets, because the markets really do vary every day. So thank you, Stephen. Let's see. Stephen also says, and thank you, Mike, as well. Stephen says, does it work on Ninjatrader or Thinkorswim? Of course it does. Both of those platforms are pretty good platforms, but I would want to check just to make sure, like I told you before, that they're not doing something that can throw off the principle. Most cases, it's not the case, but everybody who takes the course, I do check that out. So just letting you know. Thank you, Stephen. Andrew's here and he says, do I have to attend the seminar in order to purchase it? We only have one way of really delivering the seminar and the information, and that's live in person here. There are times where we have made exceptions for people who literally and truly cannot travel for one reason or another, and we have another way that we can deliver it. But that's pretty rare. If you are interested in learning the square principle, then this would be the thing for you to do, is to come to this seminar on March 5th and 6th and use every precaution while you're traveling and so on, just like we do. We're taking on risk as well by coming to the seminar and being around people and so on. But it's all very well managed. The hotels are way ahead of the curve now here in Las Vegas. And they, like I said, they have, in this one room, I think they have four to six machines that are constantly processing the air and have super high degree filters that are way beyond normal filters that would trap disease and so on. So if somebody comes into the room that actually is carrying the disease, his breath is going to be filtered by one of those 6 machines that are literally mounted on the walls. They're very quiet and processing all of that. And so he's not spreading that around. So thank you, Andrew. And if you have a question about another way to learn it, call in and speak to Jerry about that. Eddie's here and he says, does Ninjatrader have the CQG platform? I'm not 100% sure, but I think on Ninja you can get CQG data. I'm not 100% on that, but at one point I think Ninja.
I can answer that, David.
Okay,
Yeah, the answer is yes. Ninjatrader now allows you to use CQG. I know they have QTrader. They may have Trader. So they do have a couple of versions, Eddie, available through Ninja that you can utilize in conjunction with your Ninja platform. You can use CQG charting, not just data, but yeah. So the answer is yes, it's available.
Okay, super. I do want to address Stephen here, because Stephen, you've sat through this and you're very interested, and yet I know you're some skeptical. I don't know if you were here last week when we made the forecast for the big 100-point move, but when I came into the meeting today, I said the forecast that we made today that we wanted to give out had already happened, but I told you at that time the market was trading at about 45.28 or so, and I said to you, said all here, it's going to go likely up to 45.50. That's another 20 to 25 or 30 points from where they were when this meeting started, and look where they just hit, 45.51. That wasn't a guess, Stephen. That's the square principle at work. That's me doing that for you in real time. Last week we had a forecast that when when everybody came, it was a similar set of conditions where the forecast had been completing just as the seminar or this webinar started. That did happen today, but luckily we were able to say, well, there's another square that the market has to run to in this. And we gave it all out in our course, in our classes, and everything we do is recorded. So I want to say something that might sound a little bold. No one can say this isn't real anymore. There's too much evidence that it's real. I'm on live TV in front of 10,000 people every 2 weeks forecasting this. We're in rooms in our business here forecasting this for hundreds of people around the world. We're recording everything we say on every single room that we're in. It's all recorded and it can all be watched. And everyone knows now. We've been here 23 years. This is real. The real question is, are you better off without this information, or are you better off knowing an hour ago that the market was going to move up to 45, 50, like I said it would, or are you better knowing that information? I knew that because not because I'm brilliant, but because the square principle puts it all together, and I'm able to use that principle the way I'm going to teach you. So I hope that's good, Stephen, and that's really for everybody. I'm not just focusing on Stephen when I say that, but there can be no question anymore whether this is real or not. We're way past that at this point. Let's see. Ken says, kind of wish I could say I was new. I use Thinkorswim. Is it applicable to your method? That's funny that you say that. Thinkorswim is applicable. I would like to, like I do with everybody, I would check your charts for you to make sure that they're operating properly to use this. Irfan says, is the hotel stay included in the tuition? It is not, but it's not because we didn't ask. But when we have these, particularly these smaller seminars, like a COVID-based seminar where we limit the number of people, we're nothing to the hotel. You know, they're looking for 100+ people, and then it's even questionable whether they'll do a deal for that. So the hotels had their best year ever, I think, last year. So they're not in the mood to give away things right now. There are rooms you can stay in that are inexpensive, and the Mirage Hotel, while it's beautiful right across the street, there's a bridge that goes over the street that takes you to the what is it called? Harris Hotel. And you could stay at Harris for a lot less and then just walk over that bridge and come to the meeting. Let's see. Thank you, Irfan. Stephen's here and he says, I have 2 children. I paid for undergrad law school and medical school. Yeah, so you have a pretty good idea that I'm sure, well, medical school, I wouldn't even want to touch that, right? Because that's just going to be through the roof. As a matter of fact, initially, my son, I hate to even admit this, but his first thing was, I'm just going to pick the profession. You know how people go to college and they figure out what it is they want to do, and they go from one thing to another. He just picked the most expensive, the thing that would pay him the most originally, which was being an anesthesiologist. And so he just said, well, that's what I'm going to be. Then he realized how much work it was going to be and how many years he was going to have to go to school. If you paid somebody through medical school, Stephen, then first of all, let me say, from the community of people who are parents, thank you for doing such a wonderful thing for your children, because not everybody would do that and not everybody could take that on. So that's really quite something. And so there you go. You know, and that education is just what it is. You can't live without it, and with it, you can, in many cases, have an entire career. I've said this before. I don't like to speak about money to people. People want to hear about money. But I really like to speak about the idea that you could forecast really amazing things. And with that knowledge, you can figure out what you would be able to do with that. If you could forecast that the market was going to go from 25 up to 50, I don't really need to tell you. I don't have to tell you that I drive a Lamborghini or whatever. You know what that would mean for the rest of your life. You know what that education would do for you. And not just speaking to Stephen, but to everybody. Irfan says, okay, yes, I need an inexpensive option. Can you ask the ladies to block one position for me? I'm stuck in a meeting. Call right now. No, there's no worries. Jerry, you'll take care of that for him.
Done.
That's done. Thank you for the favor. No problem, Irfan. Stephen, thank you very much for your good comments, but now still too much for me. Well, listen, many, many years ago, I'm sorry to even go off the subject, but my daughter had wanted to go to cooking school in San Francisco. And so I don't need to tell you that that was not inexpensive, because you're in a dorm for a year learning cooking from real chefs in San Francisco. And that, you know, San Francisco is a real food place. So yeah, it's very expensive. And I mean, you really did your kids a real thing to put them through medical school. That's like the peak that a person can reach in paying for somebody else's education. And only a parent would probably do that. Bradley's here and he says, after attending the seminar, are we required to be subscribed to your Willing Edge subscription in order to get the trades? No. We have many, many people who go to the Square Principle seminar, and they're off and running. They call in from time to time to ask a question about a forecast that we might have made. And then we have an equal number of people who will become subscribers. They enjoy watching us put the trades together. I mean, honestly, I've been doing it for 32 years. I'm really good at it, and I can teach somebody who's been doing it for years some new little twist on it. So many of them subscribe, but it's just up to you. You're not required to. And by the way, you're not required to pay for anything else. You don't have to buy anything. There's no upsell. There's nothing else after this, unless you want to subscribe and get trades that we're putting out along with your own trades that in many cases would be the same as what we're looking for. Mike says, I've always used TradeStation. Does this platform work okay? TradeStation has, unfortunately, it does work, but it almost certainly will have to be adjusted to work correctly for the Square Principle. It's no big deal. It takes 5 minutes, but it probably will be. It depends on what version you're using and whether or not you made any change to the platform when they first shipped it to you. And we can go into some detail about that when you speak. Eddie, thank you. Eddie, thank you. Mike, Stephen says, yes, thanks. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen says, the older I get, the less money is important except for retirement. You know, the older I get, the more, and that's a great statement, the more a comfortable but quiet lifestyle becomes more important to me. I'm not trying to prove to other people that I'm somebody or something great. I'm actually enjoying my life instead of being tortured by constantly trying to prove something to people. Now, in our business, we had to prove early on in the first 10 and 15 years that we were real and that this stuff really worked and so on. We're even beyond that now. We're not really trying to prove that. We're just showing it. And if people find it fascinating and want to learn it, they, in many cases, if they can't afford it, they don't come now. But if they can't afford it, then in most cases, they will. That's a nice sentiment, Steve. Mike says, paid for my daughter's undergrad and master's, paid for my son's truck driving school. He made more than she does. Yeah, education. And nowadays, it might even be more. I don't know, with everything that's going on in the nutty United States now. I don't know, So Mark, thank you. Your phone number there. Jerry, if you got his number, that's great. So final thought. Oh, please go ahead.
Before you finish your thought, because that'll end it. I just want to say to everybody who has requested a phone call, you'll get a personal phone call from me before the end of the day. I appreciate you requesting that, and I'll look forward to speaking to each and every one of you that has requested to do so. Again, here before the end of the evening. Thanks.
Yeah, super. Listen, final thought for me. First of all, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for the interest. Whether you come or not, I'm delighted that you came and allowed us to show you some of our work, things that mean a lot to us. Now, I have something that is unique and that somehow nobody else discovered. I don't have the big education, but I have a severely high level of understanding the Square Principle. I understand it thoroughly, and I'm able to teach it. And if you like what you've seen, if you've seen our last week's forecast for 100 points, if you saw the 25 points I told you at the start today, it's going to move up to 45, 50. If you like that and want to be able to do that, I don't want you to just be happy that I can do it. I want you to be able to do it. I want you to be happy to want to do it. If that's for you and you can afford this, you have no business being anywhere else but here in Las Vegas at the Mirage Hotel on the 5th and 6th of March, which is just about 30 some odd days away. I promise you, you'll have a wonderful time. You will be amazed at what I show you. You will be thrilled to go home with all the materials and start putting it to work. You get a notebook and you will be able to put it to work right away, and you will see it working right in front of you on any chart, on any time frame that you watch. And you will know that you are way ahead. Even on day one, you'll be way ahead of where you were on Friday when you probably flew in. So thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll be back next Tuesday with more forecasts, more of the Square Principle. But if you're interested, we stop doing the seminars or webinars after about mid-month because we've collected the people that are going to come and we're preparing the materials. So remember, if you change your mind, you're welcome to do that. It will not cost you anything. Give us a call toll free, 888-231-4702, to just call in and place your deposit, or you can go online to the Square Principal. It'll go to pagetrader.com, and that'll take you to the Square Principal right here at the top, as we showed you before. And you can click on that link right here, click right here to reserve your seat, and you'll be good to go. I hope you liked what I showed you today, and I hope you like the idea of forecasting, and I hope you will seriously consider radically altering your understanding of what markets are really doing and how, therefore, to know what they're going to do. People said it wasn't true, but they're not saying that now. When they see our work, they're not able to say markets are random. They're not able to say you need to have a mathematics degree to even have a chance. They're not able to say any number of things that I've heard my whole time. And now I'm forecasting at such a high level that the people don't even come to complain, or they don't even come to say, because they just don't know how the heck it can be done. But you will on March 5th and 6th, and I'm so delighted to be able to teach it to you. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Stay well. Looking forward to seeing you then at the seminar. See you then.